Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visiting North Korea today for the first time since the historic Trump-Kim summit. Pompeo met with high-ranking North Korean officials to discuss plans to denuclearize the Korean peninsula. However, numerous reports show the rogue regime continuing to expand its nuclear arsenal. Last night, General Jack Keane was here, spoke to me about the importance of Pompeo's meeting in Pyongyang.
Secretary Pompeo will remind Kim Jong-un what the alternative is. If you're not forthcoming with a plan to execute denuclearization, here's what we're going to do. We're going right back to maximum sanctions. And if we don't get China's cooperation, we fully intend to sanction them. We're going to move towards military preparedness so we get ready for a military option. And everything will begin to change rather dramatically if we don't get the results that the administration has insisted on and the results that Kim Jong-un has promised.
Joining me now is Gordon Chang, Daily Beast contributor and author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Well, according to General Keane, he thinks there's a showdown going on right now between Pompeo and the North Koreans. What do you think?
He's absolutely right. This meeting between Pompeo and the North Korean officials is make or break. And it's because of all that we've learned about the weaponization. They've continued on at an increased pace. So this has got to be a point where Pompeo looks at what the regime is doing. You know, and if the
by the way, he's looking at images. There's a picture of him shaking hands with the North Korean leaders. But I think we can put up the time-lapse photography. It's this missile plant that they have gone right along in building. This is a time-lapse photography courtesy of the Wall Street Journal, where you can see the plant being built. This is evidence. I mean, it's absolutely clear evidence. We, after all, have the full facilities of the CIA. We have a Secretary of State who was head of the CIA. So nobody has known more. No Secretary of State has known more than Pompeo about what the North Koreans are doing.
Yeah, there are two possibilities here, David. One of them is that the North Koreans never made a decision that we thought they made to give up their weapons. The second thing is that maybe Kim, in fact, made that decision, but that he doesn't control the military. Even before...
Which do you think it is?
I wish I knew. And the reason why this is of concern is even before the summit, you know, North Korean regime watchers were always concerned that Kim didn't have a full grasp over the Korean People's Army. And over the last, let's say, 2 months, there's been two big developments which indicate that Kim, in fact, is not in command. There was the reshuffling at the top of the army, plus also at the end of last month, there was the execution of that lieutenant general. And that indicates that Kim has not fully consolidated his position with the army.
You know, the good thing, there are several. First of all, we got to mention, as we always do, the Americans that were taken out of there as a result of the opening of these discussions, even before the summit took place.
Thank
God we got the hostages out. So there's already, for those who say, oh, we didn't do anything in North Korea, we have done so. We saved 3 American lives. That's significant. We're also cracking what's going on there. I mean, they've been operating in the shell that no administration before this one has been able to crack open. We're cracking it open. What we're finding is kind of mysterious. And as you say, we don't know the answers yet. But at least we're cracking it open. We're figuring out how it works and maybe how to get through it.
And this is really important because if we're going to have this long-term relationship with North Korea, if they really are going to give up their arsenal and open themselves up, we have to have those links. And this is important for us because, you know, it would be good, at least theoretically, to have the North Koreans on our side rather than China's side, because China has been fueling this. They've been making Kim Jong-un defiant. That was what President Trump said after Kim's second meeting with the Chinese leader, the one in Dalian at the beginning of May. It appears that the Chinese have put the North Koreans up to bad behavior. So it's very important for us to wean the North Koreans away from Beijing because, you know, China really is the big villain in the neighborhood.
Speaking of China, of course, we begin our sanctions against China within the past 24 hours. They countered with their own sanctions. The Chinese government has issued a statement that's kind of a tough sell. It says, quote, the United States has violated World Trade Organization rules and ignited the largest trade war in economic history. Well, there's just no, you know, what has happened, it doesn't come any close to the largest trade war in economic history.
Well, and also, you know, China launched this trade war decades ago with this unprecedented assault, not just on the United States, but on the norms of global trading. They do not believe in any notions of rule of law, as you've been talking about, but also they don't believe in comparative advantage which is the fundamental principle of global commerce.
Was it a mistake to let them into the World Trade Organization in 2001 to begin with?
Yes. You just need a one-word answer. Yes.
Because you can't have a free trade agreement with a country that doesn't have rule of law. Free trade without rule of law leads to chaos or leads to the situation we now have. You have to have rule of law along with free trade, because if you don't have rule of law, as you don't in communist China, what's a law today could be a non-law the next day. Then you have chaos in any kind of relationship with an outside government.
And we have seen that in the last 5 years under Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler. You know, China's become much more predatory. They're closing up their markets. They're demanding that we open our markets.
And they're becoming less democratic. He's now the head of the country for life.
They're becoming much less democratic, much more coercive politically. You know, we have seen China go after U.S. companies and other companies in China. And this has really been directed from the top. And this is Xi Jinping.
Will they, we only have about 10 seconds. Will they bend? Will they cry uncle?
It depends whether Trump is willing to see this to the end. I think that our president will, and because of that, I'm optimistic about the way this turns out in the long term.